Welcome to the Thrift Store Kitchen Review, where I test all the weird junk from the thrift store so you don't have to. Welcome to today's edition of the Thrift Store Kitchen Review. Bread machines are one of my favorite kitchen items. They're so convenient. You open it up, you put your ingredients in, you turn it on, some random voodoo magic happens inside, and a couple hours later you have fresh bread. Well, before they became commonplace, there was one produced that was just really bizarre, to put it bluntly. And I found it. This here is the Welbilt Bread Machine. And I got this thing at a Goodwill in Roswell, Georgia for only $6.99. Now, I've run across this particular bread machine on Facebook Marketplace before, but I've never seen it with a box or its manuals and documentation. This one seems to have all of it, so I'm going to move the box to the side and we're going to start unboxing this. First, you have the main unit. This thing just looks outright bizarre. It's like a spaceship or a robot. It has like an R2-D2 type shape to it. It's got its control panel, its power cord. Now what makes this thing weird, number one, it has this huge glass dome that you can watch the baking process with. Most modern bread machines only come with a small plastic viewing window. This thing, you can see the whole thing. Next, what else is bizarre about it, instead of having a standard bread loaf shaped pan like literally every other bread machine, the pan on this is cylindrical. And you see the mixing blade down in the bottom. Now, I could see one advantage to this. Most bread machines are using either like a rectangular or a squarish type pan. And with that mixing blade, because it can't reach as much of the pan itself, for about the first 5 minutes during the mixing process, you end up having to scrape ingredients back down into the dough because they're getting pushed up against the walls and stuck. And then I have all the paperwork that came with it. This is interesting. It's a coupon for a free 3-strip package of Red Star Active Dry Yeast. No expiration date. I'm almost tempted to take it to a store and see if they'll accept it. Next, I have the manual, the recipe book, a recipe for wheat bread that appears there was something else on here that the original owner had torn off. And then there's this, which indicates it was built probably about 1992 because it says in this line right here, using flour from the 1992 harvest. So I'm just going to assume that's the date of manufacture. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and get the pan and the mixing blade cleaned up, and then we're going to try making bread. I've gotten my ingredients together and I'm ready to cook. Now, one other thing that's kind of weird about this bread machine is if you look at that mixing blade, right below it, this red rubber gasket, the pan actually sits on that. It has a circular opening in the bottom, and therefore, how it's made in this bread machine, as opposed to other bread machines, you add the ingredients in the order yeast, solids, liquids. Modern bread machines, it's liquids, solids, yeast. So first, I need to add 2 1/4 tablespoons, teaspoons that is, of dry yeast. So 1, 2, and then the 1/4. Next, I'm going to add 3 cups of bread flour. Then I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Here's 1, and there's the half. 1.5 tablespoons of sugar, 1 and a half, 1.5 tablespoons of dried milk, then 4¼ tablespoons of butter. Cut it up into pieces so it'll mix easier. And then finally, just under 1.5 cups of lukewarm water. So I'm going to close the lid, and I have this machine set right here to the white bread cycle. This is just the basic white bread recipe from the manual. I'm going to go ahead and start it. It is mixing up really well. That's what I was saying about with the cylindrical pan. It does mix better than a lot of the rectangular or square pans. Now the machine does seem to be shaking a little bit, but it doesn't seem to be having any problems otherwise. So in a little while, I'd imagine it's going to stop mixing, and that's going to let the dough set and rise. Now one thing that's weird, most bread machines will actually give you a timer as to how long the cycle is going to take, but this one doesn't. So we'll just check it in a bit and see what happens. It's been mixing for about 5 minutes, and as you can see, we do have a pretty well-formed dough ball going. So the mixing process is going well. So we've just reached the end of the first mixing cycle. Now, as I said, the machine does not give a timer on the machine, but I noticed in the recipe book, it does give a table as to how long each part of the cycle takes. The first rising cycle takes about an hour, and then once that hour's up, the mixing blade starts going again, and it needs it for 24 more minutes, and then it rises again. Now that's a pretty well-formed dough ball right there, so in a little while we'll come back and check and see how well it's rising. It's been about 30 minutes into the first rising cycle. The dough ball is looking really good. It has expanded outward and risen some. Then in about 30 more minutes, the machine is going to start kneading the dough ball again. We just reached the end of the first 60-minute rising cycle. This cycle, and the manual refers to it as the secondary kneading, lasts 24 minutes, after which it goes into another rising cycle. Then it goes into what it describes as loaf shaping, which only takes about 4 seconds according to this. Then it goes into another 1 hour rise, and then it goes into the 60-minute final bake. So we'll be back to check it in a little while. This is now about 10 minutes into the final rising cycle. The dough looks pretty good. It will continue to rise over the next hour, and then it'll bake. We're almost at the end of the final rising cycle, and it's about to start baking in the next few minutes. That dough has risen up all the way to the top of the container. This bread looks like it's going to be really good. The bread is now baking, and you can see it's starting to develop a crust on top. I had to figure this out when I smelled bread cooking. Now, even though it does have an indicator telling what cycle it's on, it doesn't have a timer telling when that cycle begins. But that bread is looking quite good, and in a little while, it should hopefully be ready, and we'll be able to take it out. Okay, time to pull the bread out. Go ahead and open this. Remove the pan. I'll put this over to the side and move the machine out of the way. Have another cutting board here. Is the pan still hot? Not really. Now, the blade is stuck in the bread, so I'm going to get a butter knife so I can get that out. That is one of the problems with bread machines. The mixing blade almost always gets stuck in the bread. There you go. Now, have the issue of this bread cylinder. How do you slice it? Do you cut it top to bottom and get weird oblong shaped slices? Or do we cut large circular slices? Little dilemma here. So I think I'm going to go the large circular route. So let me cut off this piece with the end. Needs a little bit more. I mean, it looks really good inside. Let me take a bite. I mean, it tastes really good. Now, as you can see, the one issue with a bread machine that makes weird shaped bread is it's kind of hard to make sandwiches, and you definitely can't toast it in a normal toaster. But as far as the quality of the bread, I'd say it's acceptable. So now that we've made the bread and seen what it does with that, now I have one more test for this machine. I've gone ahead and cleaned up the pan and the mixing blade. Now it's time to find out, will it glizz? Now, I have a bit of a conundrum here. Unfortunately, this machine, unlike the more modern bread machines, does not include the ability to just turn it on and run the bake cycle manually. I would have to literally run it dry for an entire cycle until it gets to the cooking point to try to cook the hot dog. However, I have a better idea. So while I would not be able to cook a hot dog in an efficient manner using this machine, I can do that with something else. However, this machine does include a dough cycle, and I can sure make my own buns for that hot dog. And that's what we're gonna do. So first, I need a teaspoon and 3/4 worth of yeast. Go ahead and put that in. Next, 4 cups of bread flour. Next, I need a teaspoon and 1/4 of salt. Then I need 4 tablespoons of sugar. Then I need 3 tablespoons of oil. And last, I need 1.5 cups of milk. Now I close the lid, and then I'm going to set the cycle. Now if you look here, it does say manual on here. However, that is not manual as a normal bread machine or a modern one would have. On a modern one, manual means that you can, instead of running it on a cycle, go ahead and tell it to bake, mix, whatever. For this, manual means dough cycle. So I'm going to select white bread manual, start this, and in a couple hours we'll have our dough and go from there. So the dough cycle is over with. So I'm going to remove this dough, and as it said in the recipe I found online, I'm going to move this dough to a floured cutting board. Now the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and unplug the bread machine and get it out of the way. Okay, now it says to divide this dough into 3 equal parts. So I'm going to do my best to do that. Thinking here and here be about the best places to cut. Yeah, that should about work. And then it says to divide these into 3 equal parts. Should be about good enough. Now I'm going to move some of these out of the way so I can do one. Now it says to roll these into an oblong type shape, fold it over, and pinch the edges, and then fold it over again and do the same. And then basically repeat these for all the buns and put them on a either greased or parchment covered cookie sheet and then cover it and let it rise for another 45 minutes. So I'm going to do that, and when that 45 minutes is up, I'll show you what we have. So here they are. They've sat covered, they've risen some more. Now I'm going to go throw them in the oven for 15 to 20 minutes at 375 degrees. Buns are ready. Let's see them. Honestly, those look pretty good. They're not perfect, but A, I'm not a machine, and B, I've never done this. But they honestly look quite delicious. So I'm going to go whip up a hot dog, let these cool for a minute, and then I'm going to try one. Okay, I've got a hot dog right here. Let me grab a bun. Gonna cut it open. Looks good. Definitely feels thicker than your average store-bought hot dog bun, but looks really, really good. Go ahead and insert my wiener, and I'm going to take a bite. That's really good. Yeah, that's the first time I've ever had a hot dog on a homemade roll. Usually you're used to just buying them at the store with hot dogs and not doing all this work, but I'd totally do this again. Excellent. So what's my final verdict on the Welbilt Bread Machine? Well, before I get to that part, I dug up some history on it for a little context. This particular model was actually the world's first home bread machine. It was originally developed by the Funai Electric Corporation out of Japan, and it was known as the Raku Raku Panda. It was originally licensed for overseas distribution by a company named DAC, which sold it as the DAC Auto Bakery and the DAC Turbo Baker. Then it was acquired by Welbilt. So this bread machine has some features that you just don't see on any other that are honestly quite good. First, obviously, is the giant glass dome. It's really nice being able to see the entire baking process in full view. The second feature is this right here. Earlier I had mentioned that this has a cooling cycle. Basically what that piece is, it's a fan. It intakes room temperature air and blows it on the bread and the pan in order to speed up the cooling process significantly. Now this machine does have its drawbacks as well. Obviously the big one is the weird shaped bread. Large bread cylinders really aren't practical for toast and sandwiches and stuff like that. Its lack of an actual timer is a little bit of a pain. I mean, it does have the timer table in the book, but who wants to use that? It also lacks the true manual cycle where you can tell it to bake or mix without it being connected to one of its normal cycles. The other feature it doesn't have that normal bread machines tend to have is a quick bread cycle, where essentially you alter the recipe to add in more yeast to get your bread out significantly faster. The only other drawback is that its cycles do take a good bit longer than they would on a normal bread machine. But that being said, the bread that came out of it was really good, so was the dough. So while I probably wouldn't really use this one much because I do have a more modern bread machine which I really like, it really is a cool artifact to have, and if you were ever to run across one at the price that I did, it would probably be worth picking up. Well, thanks for joining us for today's edition of the Thrift Store Kitchen Review. Be sure to subscribe, follow us on the Facebook linked in the description below, tell your friends about us, drop us a line down there in the comments section, get out there and support your local thrift store, and have a wonderful day.